Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Teacher, a man said to Jesus one day, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. It was clear that for Jesus and for us, God is supposed to be the complete focus of our worship and attention. There is no room for any other gods. Nevertheless, there are other gods mentioned in the Bible that were worshipped by other peoples and even by some Israelites at times. This week in our time together, we are looking at what we can know about these other false gods. Today we want to look at one that is mentioned a few times in the Bible, although I don't think he's ever talked about as having been worshipped by Israelites. Today we will talk about Dagon. Dagon is an ancient god worshipped by people going back thousands of years before the time of Jesus. His role is a bit confusing too. At times he is considered to be the creating god, at times as the father or progenitor of other gods, and at times as a fertility god. And this is where it gets really confusing. It seems that Dagon is honored as the god behind everything, but then other gods seem to take on his roles. For example, Dagon is said to control the weather, and then that he became the father of Baal, and after that the responsibilities of weather and rain fall to Baal, and Dagon seems to fade a bit. Worship of Dagon began in Mesopotamia and then spread all around, including to Syria. According to the Bible, Dagon was the chief god of the Philistines, although there is no evidence of that outside the Bible texts. Dagon is mentioned about 10 times in the Bible, and a few of those times are quite interesting. I'm sure you know the story of Samson, and in particular how Delilah betrayed him and violated his vow to God by cutting his hair and depleting Samson's strength. At long last, this nemesis of the Philistines could then be captured, and they took him away and put out his eyes so that he was blind. Then, at a festival one day, they brought Samson out before a packed house to make fun of him and to gloat that they had overcome him. That's when Samson prayed that his strength might return to him one last time. And he pushed over the pillars that were holding the building up, and many Philistines died along with Samson as the building collapsed. The building where this happened was the Temple of Dagon. It was a victory of Samson over the Philistines, but more importantly, a victory of God over Dagon. Yesterday I mentioned that when the Philistines won a battle against Israel and King Saul was killed, that they displayed his armor in the temple of Astarte. The Bible also tells us that Saul was beheaded, and they displayed his head as a sign of their victory in the temple of Dagon. Another very interesting story involving Dagon can be found in 1 Samuel 5. As I have mentioned before, whenever Israel went into battle, they would take the Ark of the Covenant out with them to lead them. Well, King Saul did that, and they lost that battle, and the Ark of the Covenant was captured. The Philistines took the Ark into the temple of Dagon and placed it there beside the idol of Dagon. Then Samuel tells us, when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But when they rose early on the next morning, Dagon had fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off upon the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. This is why the priests of Dagon and all who enter the house of Dagon do not step on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. It was a clear sign that Dagon did not rule, even in his own house. And then, believe it or not, things got worse. The people who lived in Ashdod were struck with a panic and with tumors. Very quickly, they wanted the Ark of the Covenant away from them, so it was taken to the city of Gath, where the same thing happened. So they proposed taking it to the city of Ekron, and when they heard of it, they flatly refused. They didn't want tumors and death visited on them. Eventually, they put the ark on a wagon with some horses and no driver and pointed it toward Israel and sent it on its way back. So in the end, we don't know a whole lot about Dagon, except that he was no match for our God. For them, for us, there's no room for any other gods. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.